And I never get asked. I've truly, Coach, I've never been asked, how good of a quarterback is he? How good of a I'm like, you watch the film. I don't need to answer that question. You know how good the kid is. It's what kind of grades do they have? What's their home life like? What do they do outside of school? They ask the little things. They want to know about the individual. They don't care that you've just thrown for 8,000 yards. They don't care.
Joining me now is the second coach in the history of Stuart Cramer football, Coach Ashton Simmons. How are you doing today?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. So before we get to your new role and kind of what goes on with you in the classroom also, let's start with you as a kid. What did sports look like for you as a kid?
So growing up in Mount Airy, North Carolina, I mean, we talk about it at family dinners all the time. Like, football was life here. My dad played, my uncles played, my cousins have played, my entire family has just been very football oriented. A lot of my family went to Mount Airy High School, which is where I'm currently at, before heading to Stuart Cramer. But I actually went to North Surrey High School, as did my brother. So football around here has just been a big thing, and it's something that I've always loved. I didn't start actually playing football until the 8th grade, and I just fell in love with it, and it's been my favorite thing in the entire world ever since.
So when you say football is life, because I'm sure you've seen Varsity Blues, like there's that famous line in there is like football is life. It's like, what does that really mean to you? Like, is it like, because you mentioned you didn't go to the same high school that your parents went to and your family
Sure.
went to. So like, does that come into play also?
It's just something like, I don't know if I've ever sat down at a family dinner or any event where football in some form or fashion was not mentioned. And it really is true when they say that, they talk about it. There's an off season, but there's really not. Like, there's so much that you can do. It's like any other job, really. There's so much you can do to make yourself better or get your program how you want it or do laundry or anything like that. So, I mean, there's so much you can do. It really is life. I mean, I would say it shaped me to who I am today, just kind of from the previous coaches that I've had and guys I've been around. It really is life. I mean, there's nothing more than that.
So you mentioned you didn't start playing football until you were in 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play other sports prior to that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My dad and I always had the conversation. I always loved basketball. I wouldn't tell a lot of people this, but I would actually prefer to watch basketball. I don't know why. I've always been a basketball guy. I actually like playing basketball still, but it just kind of fell into place. I was a basketball guy up until the 8th grade, and I didn't play middle school basketball. And I had a couple buddies that were like, "Hey, why don't you come play football?" And I'd always throw the ball around. I could always throw it, so I ended up being the quarterback of my 8th grade team. And from then on, I mean, it was just a football thing.
So this is going to be kind of a controversial question, but really just joking. Where do you fall in the realm of like year-round sports? Because it's like things now have become like football's year-round now. It's baseball's year-round. Everything's year-round now. And yes, like my son's in high school. He goes to East Gaston, so he's in the part right now where he's weightlifting and working out because it's the off season, but it's just like, which is fine. But like, where do you fall in that category of, do you think kids should play multiple sports and they should do multiple things throughout the year? Or are you one of those people that thinks like, all right, football should be their main sport? And maybe not just football. Like if you're a baseball guy, maybe baseball should be your main sport. Like, or do you think they should play everything?
Sure. I think kids should play what they want to play. I'm never going to tell a kid, no, you don't need to go do this. You don't need to go. If that's what you want to do, you've got 4 years to do it, especially at the high school level. Like, playing at the next level is never guaranteed. And I just look at it as, it also allows time for your body to rest. Like, even though after a long football season, and basketball is a contact sport. Like I hear all the time, well, football gets you hurt and this and that. Go look at Jason Tatum for the Celtics.
Yeah.
That just happened. Tore his Achilles. Like that can happen. Or Josh Hart getting hit in the head and his head's busted open. Like it's a contact sport, but it's just a different contact sport. I would even say that for baseball. Like I see all the time kids, at least around our area, they'll grow up playing baseball and they'll play it from the time they're 5 up until later on. And they play, like you said, year round. They have, all-stars. Then they'll go to Legion ball. Then they'll play fall ball. And eventually they just get so burned out of it that, I had a conversation with our baseball coach last night, actually. And we were talking about getting a couple of baseball kids that haven't played football to play. And I asked about one kid, and he said, he's going to the University of Virginia, and he's 96-mile-an-hour fastball. And I was like, then that kid doesn't need to play football. Like he's already committed to a D1 school. My first year at Mount Airy, we had a kid named Donovan Green who is at he was at Wake Forest. Now he's playing at Virginia Tech. And he didn't play basketball senior year. He's played basketball his entire life, but he was committed to Wake Forest. And it's kind of one of those things. It's like, he was going to leave early too anyway. So there was no point in him playing, but I fully encourage sports. I actually had a kid. We had a little event at Mount Holly last night to like the rising ninth graders. And I had a young man come ask me, can I play soccer and football? And I said, are you just trying to kick or you want to play? He said, no, I want to play. And I said, if the soccer coach is okay with it and your body and everything can handle it, I don't see a problem. So I'm all for multi-sport athletes. You look at these professional players, Mike Trout, Christian McCaffrey. I'm thinking Allen Iverson, in the early days. Like Allen Iverson was a better quarterback than he was a basketball player. I go watch his highlight tape. For any of these young kids who are going to watch this podcast, go watch Allen Iverson's football highlights, and you tell me like how good the guy was, because he was the truth.
Well, that's even like, so I'm a Florida State fan. It's like Charlie Ward, he wins a Heisman as a Seminole, yet he plays in the NBA with the Knicks. So it's just like it, I agree with you. I think you play everything.
People forget about Florida State too, that Jameis Winston could have went and played baseball.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, there's a whole lot of things. I mean, even Kyler Murray's whole thing, he was the one he had to deal with whatever team in baseball, and then he decided to go to the draft. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of branch out to everything, and it's, whatever works for you, obviously stick with it.
I also think, playing the multiple sports, like it teaches your body different movements, and different muscles are working at one time.
Yep.
I'm all about multi-sport athletes.
Was there a specific coach for you when you were younger that molded you into what you become as a coach, or maybe not even that, but maybe just kept you in sports, like kept you in football? I mean, I know family had a lot to do with it, but was there anybody outside of family?
Sure. So I had a time where I didn't know where I was with basketball. I felt like I was a pretty good shooter. But I was also like 6 foot. So they were like, you need to play in the post. And I'm like, guys, I'm a shooter. But, I had a coach named Todd Gerber when I was in the 5th or 6th grade. And he said, you do you, man. He said, I want you to be you. And I said, okay. So I just kept on in basketball. We had a great year. I can't talk too much about it. If my friend Nate's watching, he'll call me here in a little while and he'll get mad about what but no, then as I got to high school, I've always, Mount Airy is such a football town. Even, being at North Surrey, the rival Mount Airy High School, like we were all friends. My mom graduated with a legendary coach named Kelly Holder. He and I are the closest of friends today. But he was always good to me. We had a coach named Brian Hampton, who is now at Ashe County. He was my head coach for 3 years, and he really, he kind of molded me. I kind of looked at him as a guy that I was like, I want to be this guy. I just like what he brought to the table, a lot of energy, but at the same time, he was a football guy. And then, like I said, being around my family, Mount Airy football, I actually wanted to go to Mount Airy when I was younger. It just never happened. But I always wanted to go to Mount Airy. Like I said, my dad went there. My cousins went there. That's all I knew. And then I had another coach who I actually worked under being at North Surrey. His name was Patrick Taylor. He was the defensive coordinator my senior year. And then he's now the offensive coordinator, RJ Reynolds. And he and I talk about every day now. I mean, he was such a blessing in my life. And again, you know, just those guys being there for me, it was always a blessing. And that is something I do try to do. I would consider myself a player's coach. I really like to be involved with the kids, even if we're not talking football. I mean, I'll joke with them, you know, or just talk junk to them, or, you know, talk about sports. I like hearing their opinions. You know, I hear the LeBron James is the GOAT opinion all the time. So I have to set some kids straight. But no, I mean, those coaches have really impacted me, and I would say they've kind of helped make me who I am. They've helped me live out my dream of being a head football coach. So
you get to 8th grade, you start playing football. What was the goal? Like, what was your plan at that point in time? Like, did you have, I mean, and I know the easy one is everybody wants to play in the NFL, but
sure.
what was your goal besides that?
I'll be honest. You know, like I had said, Mount Airy football was a thing, but I didn't go to Mount Airy. I went to North Surrey. Well, I went to all the North Surrey football games growing up. And you know, my dream at one point was to be the starting quarterback there. And, you know, you talk about adversity. I was never the starting quarterback at North Surrey. But it always drove me, and it was always goal oriented. And I really never had a dream to play college football. I just enjoy being out there with my friends and the brotherhood that football brought. I'll say this till I die. I mean, the group that we had at North Surrey, my 4 years, we were the closest of friends. Like we have a bond. I still talk to those guys today. Like I said, the brotherhood, that was a big thing to me. Just having a group of friends, like, you know, you hear in the song, The Boys of Fall, like it's a certain group, and it really is. Like, I've got cold chills thinking about it right now. Like, it's just a certain group. Like, it's a privilege to be in that group. Because every day it's blood, sweat. It's hard. Football is hard. But it really shows the character when you get done. And it's like I said, it's life. For me, football is life.
So I want to talk about the teaching aspect of it in a minute, and like you being a teacher, but you brought up something, and before we continue with you, but like you brought up something about being the backup, like you were never the starter, right?
Yeah.
So I teach 4th grade, and one of the things like I always try to explain to kids is it doesn't matter what your role is, like in group projects, or what your role is in the classroom, whatever it is, the role matters. Like just because it's not the quarterback or the starting quarterback, or not just because it's not the wide receiver, or you're not like, you know, kids always forget like there's a bunch of other positions on their team, or there's a bunch of coaches on the team, or there's a bunch of things that go in to the game plan and to the game daily that you have a lot to do with, even if you're not the starter. That's so right. Can you speak on that for a minute? Like just of how important like your role was as the backup? Because I mean, just because you're the backup doesn't mean you're not going to play at some point.
No, absolutely. And Coach Murdoch is a guy, he's here. He's just a local coach that coaches at Mount Airy High School right now. He tells me at least once a week, he's like, I hate how there is a position called the quarterback. He said, you know, the media and everybody hypes that name up, the quarterback. He's like, if it wasn't for that name, then it wouldn't. I mean, it's just another guy. But now, you know, the media and everybody else in the NFL and whatnot makes it to where the quarterback is the guy. Not to get off topic, but, you know, Cam Ward doesn't go number one if it wasn't a need for the quarterback. Like, he's not the best player in the NFL draft.
Yep.
But they needed that. So, but no, going back to what you're saying, there are 10 other positions on the field too. Like, you know, I worked at tight end some, played receiver some. Wish I would have focused a little more on defense, but it just never happened. But, you know, it was my job to get the varsity, the starting team ready every week. And I took that with a lot of responsibility. I got the scout team together. I ran the scout team. I had a role, and even, I was always very fundamentally, like, I felt as if at a young age, I understood the game. And I would even help our starter at the time, like, get ready for him. I was like, hey, when you're carrying out your fake, you need to do this. And he's like, why? I was like, well, your eyes is what makes this play. It's not the fact of how quick you get out of your break or how quick you throw the ball. It's the eyes of looking the ball in and then pulling it back in to draw a defender inside. So, no, there's definitely roles on every team. There's roles for any group, any team. Going back to basketball, my brother was a wrestler, very good wrestler, and he never liked basketball. He said, well, I can't really shoot the ball. Well, I didn't ask him then, but I talk to him now about basketball all the time. I said, do you know who Dennis Rodman is? And he said, yeah, I've heard of him. I said, he averaged like 4 points a game. I said, but he averaged like 15 rebounds a game. So even in basketball, I try to encourage our kids, well, I can't score. Well, go rebound, go play defense. Like, you can do anything. Baseball, I see a lot of guys now, they'll play baseball and just come in to pinch run, just to run bases. Like, yep. That's a big deal. So I think everybody does have a role. And at Stuart Cramer, we're embodying that. Everybody does have a role on this team, whether you're the starter, whether you're not the starter. You have a role on this team. It may not be what you want, or it may not be fully defined, but you will have a role on this team, and you are appreciated.
So now let's cruise through high school. So you're going through high school. Obviously, as you mentioned, you're not the starter. So I'm going to assume, just based on this conversation, you don't get an athletic scholarship for football. Right. So that changes my direction here. But at what point do you decide, all right, coaching's for me, and I want to eventually become a teacher or a coach, or how do you go that path?
So it's kind of like I had said before with Coach Hampton and Coach Taylor. Coaching was something I'd always thought I wanted to do. I just love the game so much. When I got out of high school, I went to a community college here in Surrey County, and I had actually thought, I'm gonna go be this. I was very good at math. I'm actually currently a math teacher, so I was like, I'm gonna go be a pharmacist. I want to go make a lot of money. Very math oriented job. I'm gonna go do that, and then I realized that I wasn't very good at science classes. I made like 2 C's in biology, and I was like, okay, this isn't it. But then my brother was in the 8th grade, and at the middle school that I went to, they didn't have a coach. Well, they got a coach, and he didn't know a lot about football. So my dad, who he always used to call himself Coach Bag Holder, he was like, that's all I'm here to do is hold the bag. Like, if somebody needs me to hold the bag. Well, the principal at the time there asked Dad if he would come coach. Well, North Surrey wanted Gentry Middle School to run the same offense that they did. Well, they gave them like a couple of sheets of paper of the offense and this and that, but they didn't know it. So Dad comes home and he's like, Ashton, I need you to teach me this offense. And I said, okay, I can do that. Well, I go and watch practice one day. I just wanted to see what it looked like. And it did not look the best. I'll just say that. And so dad knew I was there, and he just yells for me. He said, come down here. And I said, okay. He said, will you fix this? And I said, okay. So I did. And then the head coach then and the principal had asked me, they said, would you like to help coach? And I said, sure. And we won 1 game that year. But still, like, just being involved, being around my brother, being around football again, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I actually had a conversation with my mom probably a couple months later, maybe a year. And she asked me why I wanted, why didn't I want to be a pharmacist, or why didn't I want to do this or that? And I said, because I don't love that. I said, that's not something that I see myself doing for the rest of my life. Like, I don't love it. I was like, and she would always talk about the money aspect, and I understood that. Yeah. But at the same time, I said, if I'm not going to be happy, then it doesn't matter. And I knew that football made me happy, and being a role model to young kids and just developing young men or women. I mean, I've obviously teach girls too. Just being a role model for them and being able to be there for them and guide them. I don't think there's a better feeling. I really don't.
So you get inside the classroom, now you become a teacher, and you're obviously also coaching. What do you see crosses over from your coaching life into the classroom? Because I'm a big believer in, sports translate into life and into the classroom. So like, what do you carry over that's, you catch yourself doing it on the field and you also do it in the classroom?
I think the first thing is just holding kids accountable. And for me, it's more of the little things. Like at Stuart Cramer the other day, we had a spring practice, and I said, you're going to have one sprint, 100-yard sprint. And they said, okay. Well, I was like, ready. I did our little cadence, and I had my whistle in my mouth. Well, about half of them took off. And I said, no, that's a 5-yard penalty. We did 5 push-ups. I said, all right, let's do it again. They did the same thing, 5 more push-ups. Like it was an ongoing thing for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And they're like, Coach, what are you going to blow the whistle? And I'm like, no, I'm teaching you, like, you've got to be disciplined enough to not do this. And I know that's a small little thing, but you know, at some point there's going to be some adversity in your life, or a time where you're going to have to be disciplined enough to either do things the right way or you're going to suffer the consequences. I would also, classroom management is something young teachers always struggle with. I don't even know if I'm a perfectionist at it. But coaching helped me gain confidence in the classroom for classroom management. I'm not afraid to call somebody out if they need to be called out. But at the same time, it's more out of respect and more of a, I just need you to focus. It's not trying to get at you. And I'll even go up to the kid later and I said, look, this is nothing personal, but I'm just trying to make you the best person you can be. And right now you're not doing that. So there's a lot of life lessons. I had one. I actually thought about some of the questions you had asked me. And one was, when things are getting tough and things are getting hard, do you want to fight through it or do you want to be a quitter? Like, because if you quit something once, you might be labeled as a quitter your whole life because you're going to be more prone to quit other things. I quit my 7th grade basketball team and I regret it. I wish I never would have. But my dad always told me, he said, this is going to lead to a bad transition for you of quitting. And at one point I wanted to quit our football team at North Surrey. But I stuck with it. I mean, and it really drove me. It really drove me to be the best person I can be. So going into the classroom, like I said, classroom management and accountability was the 2 biggest things, but also relationship building. Like I said, I feel like I'm a player's coach. I have so many relationships with kids in the school. At our school now, I'm hoping at Stuart Cramer, at every other school I've been at. I love being able to go out to eat and seeing a kid that I've taught or coached and say, hey, coach, how are you? And it's just a little thing, but I mean, they know who I am. I know who they are. I could tell you all the jokes we used to cut up with each other. Even we don't even have to talk about football. We could talk about ballet. We can talk about dance. We can talk about whatever they're interested in. And I love to do that. I'm going to call my nerd self out here. I love Star Wars, love Star Wars. So I talk to kids all the time about Star Wars or the Avengers or, superheroes, whatever. It doesn't matter. But just those little things there get kids on your side. They trust you. They learn to trust you. And I'll carry that with me forever.
Yeah, well, and I agree with you. Relationships are huge because if you build that relationship with it, the kids are going to do almost anything for you. And then they're also like, I'll tell you a funny story. So once upon a time, I was interviewing, in my prior life before I became a teacher, I was interviewing Dabo Sweeney. And I told you earlier, I'm a Florida State fan. So sitting there, it's like, it's kind of awkward. But when it was done, I was ready to run through a wall for the guy. Like
100%.
Because he just made you feel like, and it had nothing to do with like X's or O's or like wins or losses. It was just legitimately like this guy was like, he had like, there was a plan for like how you're going to get there. It doesn't matter like what you bring something to the table regardless of whatever the situation is. And it was just like, and that's like, he literally in the 15 minutes I'm interviewing the guy, he built a relationship with me that I'm just like, I'll run right through this wall right now for the dude. I was like, forget Florida State. I said, I'll throw some orange and purple on
right now. 100%.
In your experience, how much do you think playing sports affects kids academically?
I think it's kind of it's not a running joke, but in a way, you can always tell how the school year is going to go by how your football season goes. I know that sounds crazy, but like if your football season is going well, and I'm not even necessarily saying wins and losses. I'm just saying if the morale is there, kids are coming out, like your school is going to be so much better off than if it's not. So I think at the same time too, I think some kids, we don't always know their home life. We don't always know what happens outside of the 8 to 3 every day. Sometimes, sports is all they have to keep them out of trouble, to keep them out of something they shouldn't be doing. And while we have to keep their academics up because they are student before athlete, I think athletics really helps drive that and helps them give them a sense of belonging. Kind of talking about our roles again. It allows them to have a sense of purpose and belonging, to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And it makes them want to do better and get out of a negative situation that they may be in. I really think sports drives that, and I think it helps open that window up for anybody that wants to join.
Well, I think it also goes back to, you mentioned it earlier too, like the accountability thing. Like if you're involved in a sport, you have to be accountable as far as, yes, the teamwork aspect of it, but also like in the classroom, like your grades matter, how you are, and even if the state doesn't have a GPA, whatever, like you still have to have like, can't get in trouble, can't get suspended, can't get expelled, right. You can't have any of that happen, so it's like, so the accountability factor is there also. How do you teach stuff in your class? Now, forget about football for a second. In your classes, how do you teach like teamwork and working together? Because I see it in fourth grade all the time. The one thing that happens year after year, and I always say this like when they come in, and it changes as the year goes on, but it's just like these kids can't work together at all. Like there's like, it's very hard to get them to understand, like, I understand that you're not best friends with this person, but you need to be able to get along with them. There's a lot of people I don't get along with, but I just deal with it,
I'll even take this kind of a step further if that's okay. So like as a teacher, I'll be honest, I really don't do a lot of group work. Being a math teacher, it can get difficult at times to do that. Keep kids on task. But at 16 years old, my dad made me get a job. He said, if you're not going to play basketball and you're not going to play a winter and spring sport, you're going to get a job. And I said, okay, fine. So I got a job at the local food line here, and there were people. I mean, I met all sorts of different types of people. The higher end people that made a lot of money and knew everybody, and then the people that didn't make a lot of money and maybe on the lower end scale, the pay scale, or but I learned so much from having to work together with those people about we were on the stock crew, and this job's not getting done if we don't all work together, whether we like each other, whether we don't like each other, whether we don't believe in the same thing. Like we have to get this goal finished, or we're not going home. Like we're going to be here for quite a while. And just being in that aspect, having to go out in the real world and learn about what the public and the people are really like, having teamwork and team-oriented goals there. We couldn't have, accomplished those goals without being a team. like I said, in the classroom, I struggle. I say it's one of the faults I have every year. I always say I'm going to do group work, and then I try it, and it doesn't work out for me as good as it does other teachers. But at the same time, I know what it's like to work as a team. I know what it's like to be a team. We talk about our principal, Jason Dorsett. He's one of the best. He talks about we're a team. As a teacher, as a group of teachers, we're all a team trying to mentor these young kids. So I think that being a team player and be willing to get your hands dirty if you have to, I think that comes into play too. I tell our coaches all the time, and the ones that I've met with and have joined on my coaching staff, I say, no job is bigger than you. I don't mind sweeping the floor. I don't mind doing the laundry. I don't mind mowing and painting and all that good stuff. Like, if you think the job's bigger than you, then this isn't the place for you, because we're all a team. Like, this has to get done. And it's not, we don't have a magic wand to magically make it happen, that we've got to be a team and do this. So I do think, kids, fourth graders, I think teamwork is a big deal. And I love seeing, like, in the elementary schools, like in PE and stuff, they, kids playing together and having to work as a team in activities. I think that is so important. I think we actually get away from that at times too. And I even talk to myself, call myself out, that I need to do a better job of continuing and building teamwork in my classroom and as an environment of that.
Yeah. Well, and I know people that, like, if they have a certain group of kids, like say a certain year, right? And teamwork doesn't work for them. It's not working right now. It's like the kids can't get along. It's like sometimes they abort the mission. Mm-hmm. And it's like, teach their own, everybody do their own thing. But it's just like, it's one of those things. It's like, I think, like, just because they can't get along at that moment doesn't mean you abort the mission. Like, you have to stick with the plan. Like, and I'm sure it's the same with your plays in football. Like, you're going to have a plan. And just because you run that play and the first play doesn't work, you're not going to say, hey,
no,
forget the plan. We're going to drop out of this. It's like, you have to have a plan. Now, I mean, granted, if you go a couple months and it's still thinking, then maybe switch things up.
That's right. And I do say football is the ultimate team game. Like we've talked about life a little bit, but even athletically, it's the ultimate team game, because you can't, if the offensive line's not playing together as a unit, then you're not going very far. I love basketball. I've mentioned that. But you can have one player in basketball score 50 points a game and you might win. Football, the quarterback can be the best player in the state, but if he doesn't have five guys protecting him in front of him, then he may not be as good as he can be. If he doesn't have somebody that can catch the ball, I mean, that doesn't help him either. So just being a cohesive unit and everybody, wanting to accomplish one goal, that's a big deal. And that's something I really preach to our kids at Stuart Cramer is, I've come here to win and build you guys up and create relationships and send you off better than you when you were here before. But we have to have a common goal. If we don't have a common goal, I preach I call it team. And I know it's very cliche, but team stands for toughness, effort, attitude, and mentality. Control what you can control. And we're going to be a very unselfish football team. I told them at my meet and greet, we had a little meet and greet at Stuart Cramer. And I said, I don't care about your stats. I don't care about, I care about one thing on a Friday night. And when I look up at that scoreboard and we win, that's what I care about. I don't care about, I want you to go to college and play, and I'm going to help you with that as much as I can. I want to get you a job. I want you to go be a great husband and father. I was like, that's my goal for you. But while we're here playing, I don't care. Like, if, we have a great running back. I said, if we throw it 1,000 times and you get one carry, I said, at the end of the day, did we win? That's the question. Or vice versa. If we've got a really good running back and we can run the ball 100 times, did we win or did you get what you wanted? Because if it's not about we, when me turns to we is when the best teams come out. When me turns to we. So
you mentioned you want kids to play, obviously play college football and move on to the next level.
Sure.
So I'm sure you've seen a little bit of it, being the quarterback's coach up in Mount Airy, but now you, as the head coach, you're going to deal with a lot of it with recruiting.
Sure.
You have this platform right now because same deal. I try to tell kids all the time. It's like grades matter, but like you're also you as a person matter, and like how you are as a person matters. So like, how much do you think that comes up? And I'm sure you've already seen it, like where coaches, they like, I tried to explain to somebody the other day, Nick Saban can look on film and see how good of a running back you are. Sure. He doesn't need to ask Coach Simmons how good of a running back you are. What he needs to ask Coach Simmons is, what kind of person are you? Do you show up when you need to? Are you worried about me versus we, like you just mentioned? Like, will he do this? Will he do that? So how much does that play into it?
It's kind of what you just said. So we've had some coaches been in the building at Stuart Cramer so far when I've been there, at Mount Airy, at Starmount High School, wherever. And I never get asked. I've truly coached. I've never been asked, how good of a quarterback is he? How good of a – I'm like, you watch the film. I don't need to answer that question. You know how good the kid is. It's what kind of grades do they have? What's their home life like? What do they do outside of school? They ask the little things. They want to know about the individual. They don't care that you've just thrown for 8,000 yards. They don't care. One funny story, a buddy of mine and I were talking about the other day. I don't remember what player it was, but Kirby Smart at Georgia walked into a high school and saw a kid who they thought was just phenomenal. And the kid was acting a fool. Like he was disruptive. His teachers and guidance counselors, he talked to a couple of his individual teachers. And he told the kid, he said, we're revoking your scholarship. And he's like, why? He's like, it's not about how good you can play. Clearly you can play. But we don't want this negativity on our football team. Like we don't want this distraction of the common goal. So that is a big part. And I'll even, again, take this a step further. I've told all my coaches, if you're not good people and you don't love kids, I don't care if I have Nick Saban. If you don't love kids and you're not about us, I don't want you here. I say that with our kids too. If the goal is not we and the goal is not to win and be a cohesive unit, I don't want you. I go somewhere else and I'll be okay with it. At the end of the night, I've got to put my head on my pillow and say, am I okay with all of this? And, I preach high character. We're big on yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, hats off in the building. Just little stuff, kind of like you said, being disciplined. Yep. But, stuff like that matters. Like I said, I've never had a college coach ask me, well, how good of a running back is he? You already know the answer to that question. I don't have you wouldn't be here if you didn't know the answer to that question.
Well, and it's like, and I think too, sometimes kids don't understand. And I'm guilty of this also until, as I got older, you don't realize like when you focus on the we, or like you don't focus on the main intent, like you're focusing on something else is like what you want. Like you just focus on the right stuff. The other stuff comes. So like the we, yes. Like if you like, so Stuart Cramer, for example, if you guys have this phenomenal year, there's going to be a lot of kids from your school getting recruited because obviously that all has to line up for you to have a successful year. So it's like but it's hard to like see that vision when you're only focused on you. But it's the minute you turn everything to like other people, it's like positive stuff starts happening to you. And I've never been like that person where like I think like positivity, like the positivity, but it really does. Like if you think about it, it's like if everybody does their job on the football field, you're going to win games. And what does win games mean? Well, win games means that now there's going to be more eyes on you. Well, what do more eyes mean? More eyes mean kids are going to be recruited. So it's just like, it's just weird. Like but it's hard to tell 15 and 16-year-olds.
It is. And I tell our kids too, do your job. If you focus on your job for the team, everything else will come into play. But I also too want our kids after 4 years. I want people in the community of Mount Holly and Belmont and wherever else to know that our kids came from Stuart Cramer, not necessarily just because of how good of a football player they were, but what kind of, program we're building and, the things we're teaching them and the fact that they can be good people coming out of our high school.
So let's go a little rapid fire now. Favorite sports movie?
Oh gosh. Remember the Titans.
Oh, good one. That's one of my favorites too. And I actually watched that like a month ago because I was just kind of like, I was so into like thinking about it at school. I'm like, let me go home and watch it.
I would argue Coach Carter. But
okay.
if I had to say, I remember the Titans.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm not a big Coach Carter fan. I can see how you are obviously loving basketball. So you fall right in there. But remember the Titans has got so many good, like there's just good quotes. There's good stuff in there. Like this, you talk about
a
like
lot of life lessons.
Yes, a lot of life lessons. And you mentioned earlier too, like, Goosebumps raising it. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in that movie that's just like, all right, this is great.
They came together for one common goal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. If you could coach any sports team, any professional sports team, what team would it be and why that team?
Oh gosh. I'm going to be biased, I guess, but I guess I'm going to say the Panthers. I mean, they need all the help they can get, but I think we're on the rise. I mean, I really do. I love the direction. I would have loved to have coached a basketball team in like the 90s just to see I want you, because you hear about the difference of athlete and toughness. And I would just want to see what were those practices like compared to now, or just the mentality of everything. Like I would love to be a coach in the 90s.
Is there a quote or a mantra that you kind of live by?
So my former head coach in high school, he loves Nick Saban, loved Vince Lombardi, Coach Hampton. I think he kind of mended this quote a little bit, but it was always something like, strive for perfection, knowing that perfection is not obtainable, but settle for excellence. I'm a perfectionist in life. I hate that about myself. It's honestly a negative more than a positive, but I want everything to be perfect. But I also know that not everything's always going to be perfect. So if I can do the best job I can in anything that I do, and have to settle for excellence, then I'm doing okay. And I preach that to our guys as well. There's another quote it's a terrible movie, but the last Rocky movie. And he talks about, it's not how hard you get hit. It's how hard you can get hit and then keep moving forward. Like you're always going to face adversity at some point in your life. What are you willing to do about it? And how much are you willing to strive for the next goal? That's a big one.
Is there who's the most inspiring athlete in your opinion? It doesn't have to be current, obviously.
Sure. Most inspiring. I'm a big Tom Brady guy. I love Tom Brady. I used to not like Tom Brady. I was always a Peyton Manning guy. I would play Madden and I was like, I want Peyton Manning or I want Michael Vick. But my dad, again, football guy, he always said, this is the guy you never want to play against. And I said, why? He said, he just gets it. Like he doesn't have the best arm. He doesn't have this, but he finds a way to win every time. And this was like those early Patriot teams that won the Super Bowl against the Panthers and the Rams and the Eagles. But I also followed Brady's story of, he didn't start at Michigan until his senior year or his junior year. And then he got benched. And then he started again in high school. It was kind of the same thing. Yep. He comes to the NFL and he has to work his tail off to beat Drew Bledsoe out. And if it wasn't for an injury, then we may not know who Tom Brady is. But, just his story of never quitting and he faced so much adversity in his life. And yet now there's no doubt he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I actually have a song. It's called Just One. It's by a band named Hoobastank. This is an early 2000s band. Oh, yeah. And it just talks about just one, all it wants is an opportunity. And that's kind of what I've been my whole life. Not being the starting quarterback. I was never the smartest kid in school. I was never the lower end. I was always like middle of the pack. I was like, I just need an opportunity. And, I'm very thankful that Stuart Cramer has taken a chance on me, and I don't take it lightly. This is my opportunity to prove myself. I mean, I've been told no many times before in every aspect of life. I've applied for jobs before and never got them. And I think it goes really to both my parents. I can't thank them enough for giving me the drive and like the willingness to just pick back up and keep going. Like I'm going to be told no probably tomorrow. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to be told no. I'm just going to say, okay, fine. I'm going to move forward and find a solution or find a way to get better. And I think his story and that song and just the adversity I faced in my life has really brought me to who I am today.
What advice do you give to aspiring coaches or teachers that want to make an impact somehow?
I would say relationships matter. It's not about the kids don't know, they don't care what you know until they know how much you care. Like if you care and show how much you care, then they'll figure out, well, he does know a little bit. If you don't have the relationship, then it doesn't matter. You can be the greatest teacher that's ever walked the earth. You know all this math, you know all this English. If you don't know how to say hey to a kid and say what's up, it doesn't matter. You could be the greatest coach in the world and know X's and O's and this and that. If you don't know how to talk to kids and be involved with them, then it doesn't matter. So that's one thing I would say. I've already hit on it before, but no job is bigger than you. I'm a type of guy that if I see a piece of trash on the ground, I'm going to pick it up. Somebody's got to do that. We may as well just go ahead and work together and help that. But like I said, you got to get your hands dirty too. You don't be afraid to jump in and try something new. That's what I've had to do at Stuart Cramer. I mean, I've had times where I'm scared to death about having to move 2 hours away. And I still am to a point, but at the same time, Stuart Cramer has taken a chance on me to be the head football coach, and I owe it to myself and I owe it to them to get over it and move and try and let's see what happens.
To not get into specifics about like the interview and like questions that they were asking you in the interview or the interview process, how much comes into play? Like this goes back to, again, like the sports aspect, forget about the wins and losses. Like how much comes into play, like your vision and the vision for the program and community. And you mentioned earlier about like, you want the kids to be great, mentors and leaders in Mount Holly and Belmont and the surrounding areas. So like, how much does that come into the interview?
So it's kind of like we had talked about with the college recruiting a little bit. They're never going to ask you, how good of a running back are you? Talking about that kid.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever been asked a single like football question in a coaching interview, as in like, what play would you run here or this? I don't think I've ever been asked that. They're not going to interview you if they don't think you know anything. Like they're going to obviously call references and, those people are going to hopefully, talk good about you. But I was more asked about the vision of the program and what I see, in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, talking about the culture that I want the program to have. Fundraising. That's always a big one. So, kind of you were talking about a little bit, what advice could I give to somebody even in that aspect? And I know I've only been a head coach for about 2 months. Number one, you're not ready for the job. I can tell you that personally. You may think you're ready, but you are not ready. As much as you think you are, you're not ready. But also, it's not about what you know as a football coach, X's and O's wise. What visions do you have, and can you sell yourself? How can you sell yourself to where they're going to want to hire you? And I can say this, and I won't get, like I said, too much specifics what they asked me, but the main points that I have were about turning a culture around, turning a team around, and relationship building. Those were the two biggest hits that I had. And that's what I when I put my head down at night, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to, eat, breathe, and sleep. That's what hill I'm willing to die on, is the relationship part and the culture that I want to have. Those are the two biggest things.
All right. So the last one for you, you have an interesting journey because you mentioned like you're in your you're the second coach for this program. The program's been around a few years, not a lot, not a long time. I remember when the high school was built, and I know the guy who was there before you.
Yeah.
What's your vision for what's going to like not really happen, but like what's your vision for the team? And you have like it's crazy like waters you have to navigate because it's a new team still. You're still in the infant stage. You're the second coach, so you have to make some changes there. Like, just what do you see as your vision for this team? Whether it's on the field, in the community, just what do you see happening?
I think, I hit on it before, but I want our kids to be good people. I want our kids to be able to come out of this and be great people and great young men. It goes beyond wins and losses. If you take care of the little things, being a good person, your academics, working hard, working as a team, doing what you can to prepare yourself, whether it be in the weight room, on the field, off the field, the wins and losses are going to come. We just got to preach a vision of, hard work and never quitting and doing the little things. I ask all our coaches, what is the one thing that Stuart Cramer has lacked the last few years? And I said, we're not going to call a coach out or anything like that, but what is one thing that it lacks? And the two words were mental toughness. Like our kids, they don't know how, I don't want to say they don't know how to win, but it's like when adversity hits, they fold. And that's something that's my goal, is to break them of that. We want to put them in situations where they're going to have to be broken of mental toughness. And that's something that I really want to change. And I think if we can change that, the sky's the limit for this place.